rising sun, we are the children.
The first sentence on this letter, I didn't even have to read that it was from my dad, because I can tell it says, "Dear Caitlin, I am writing this letter really slow because I know that you can't read very fast." The trek was such an awesome experience for me. It's kind of hard to just put it in a few words, but I think the coolest thing for me was when I actually had already come home. It was interesting for me to see how my perspective on the pioneers had changed. I went to a young women's lesson on that Sunday, and I noticed a picture of the pioneers on the wall, and it surprised me. I looked at that and I was like, wow, that's such an awesome picture. What did we just put it up? And they said, no, we've had it up there for a while. And it's just, I had never really noticed it because I hadn't really taken into consideration how much they had done. So I just really appreciated being able to go on the trek to experience just a small bit of the hardships that they went through, to be able to just get a better perspective and see that I can do hard things.
Last of the fearless, we are the light and love, shining in darkness.
I got rocks in my shoe for how it feels to get blisters. Got that one, so this next 30 minutes will be fun.
I need to stay positive in the things that I do and everything I do, and to remain positive and help other people remain positive. The trek helped me change my opinion on pioneers by knowing that they went through a lot of hard things, but they also helped other people go through the hard things when times were a little bit easier for them. They always looked to help other people. The hardest part of the trek was probably the first night when we were hiking in the dark and we couldn't see anything and we were tripping over rocks, but we got through it. I'll probably never forget the women's pool because we sat there and watched them pull, and we kind of felt useless because we couldn't do anything. But
reaching out to all places, calling out to our nation.
I think the hardest part is mainly all the walking. The trek changed the perspective on my perspective on the pioneers. So just seeing on how they had to do it, on how they did it for me, I feel very thankful for them. This trek showed me that I could do hard things, even when times get tough. The hardest part is when I felt useless. During the trial where I was blinded by oil, and when I sat and watched the girls do the hike.
Now your chance has come. Arise, arise, arise. Arise, arise, arise.
I realize I don't really have it that bad. We're not carrying a hand cart every day across the country. Also trying to sleep in the cold, and it snowed on us too, so it was something I quite wasn't prepared for, and that's given me a little bit of an outlook on the pioneers and how tough they were. We don't have it as bad. We need to stop complaining what we do now. So we need just to grow up and tough it out.
Looking to the sky, destined for glory. Here on this journey,
it has helped me to appreciate the little things in life more, because on the trek the pioneers didn't have so much, and they had just not as much food, and it helped me to see how much they've persevered, even though we just did a little bit of how they did so much every single day, and we just did a little bit, just a little taste of it. I think the hardest part was the women's push, definitely, because when all those pioneer men went off to war, all the women were left to push the carts, and it was really hard. I'll never forget getting the letter from my mom. That was the sweetest letter I've ever read, and it just helped me to get through that last day just so much more.
Are wandering and show the way, reaching out to all places, calling out to our name.
It helped me appreciate the small things in life, because the pioneers didn't have much, and I couldn't imagine living like the pioneers did. I look up to them, if they can go through that hard stuff, that I could get through my hard trials in life. Just the whole thing, it was a really good experience, and I really liked the letter that my mom wrote to me. It really touched me, and because in her letter she said that she looked up to me, and it makes me feel good about myself.
There's promise on the horizon. Now's your time to shine.
The trek really made me realize what trials that the pioneers were having to endure every day. They didn't really have it easy, and especially when we had a lot more help from the leaders, and it was just kind of it was hard not knowing how far we have come and how far more we need to go. It was kind of scary to think that we had a lot more to go, but it really wasn't. But that was the hardest part for me. The part that I'll never forget is how willing the youth of the church were willing to help each other. It was just amazing to see when people were struggling or just falling behind, how quickly and how many people were willing to go back and just give them a helping hand or check to make sure they're all right or see if anything they could do to help. That's just
So what was the hardest part about the whole trek?
I think the first night after walking so long and then having to set up her own tents and like cook her own food, it was really cold and I kind of didn't want to go after that. But I was happy I went.
Praying day and night, we will all kneel down.
It's made my testimony a lot stronger, and it's made me closer to my family, and it's changed my perspective of the pioneers. I always thought when I went on the trek, I realized it was super hard and it was way worse than I've experienced on the trek. And I couldn't imagine doing it longer than for that long. No, I think I wouldn't have survived. I think the women's pool was the hardest part of the trek. My family was the last one to be going up the hill, but seeing all the angels coming and helping us made me so blessed to know that there's angels everywhere to help me through my daily life.
If we humble ourselves, we'll be.
The hardest part was having to try and make fire, so when it melted, it got all the wood wet, and so then we couldn't really start a fire with wet wood, and it was really hard to start it with the wood because it was all wet from the snow. The part I'll never forget was the first night when we had even like the most basic of ingredients to make a dinner, and even though it took a long time to start the fire and get all of it cooking, it still tasted really good, even with the most basic of ingredients. Because after a long day of walking, even the smallest of food can taste really good.
Arise, 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 arise.
We have a lot of things that pioneers didn't have, and personally I'm thankful for warm beds and showers and food that comes off hot off the grill, and that we didn't have to spend 4 hours to make. Because that was probably the hardest part, because we had to wait for so long. Even after we were tired, we still had to make dinner, and then we had to go to sleep. And one time I didn't even eat dinner on the first night because I was so tired I just went to bed. and that was more important to me, was sleep. I'm so much more thankful that they came across and I didn't have to, because there are a few hard parts. One of the hard parts is watching the girls come up on their own. That was pretty hard, just sitting there knowing that we could have been helping them, but they were doing it by themselves. That was also pretty impressive to watch them do it by themselves. But surviving on beef jerky and stale biscuits was pretty hard. That's all we ate on the trail. But we had better food when we got to the camp, but we had to take 4 hours to make that. Probably at the end, when we had our devotional with all of our testimonies, and everybody was sharing how they were so grateful and how hard it was, but how much they enjoyed it. That was probably the most memorable to me. It seemed hard just looking at it. I was terrified going up there because I didn't know what was going to happen. But especially when we got out of the car and we looked around at the snow and realized that we were all going to die. And we just kind of walked around and we can't feel our toes. We come from Arizona where it was like 80 degrees in the morning right now, and we get out of the car and it's blowing wind and it's freezing, and all of a sudden it starts to snow, and we're all in just tennis shoes and just clothes that felt comfortable down on Mesa, but now we're way too cold. We're trying to get into our buckets, which are all wet and muddy, and trying to take turns going into the car so we can get all our stuff out, because it was cold. And from now on, instead of saying it was 4 inches of snow, it was probably even like 1 inch, but from now on, all my kids will know that it was 4 feet of snow, and we walked 23 miles.
Horizon bringing the new day. Horizon bringing the new day. Reaching out to all places. Horizon bringing the new day. Calling out to our nation. Horizon bringing the new day. Now's your time to shine. Now's your time to shine. Now's your time to shine.